So last week we started to look at the shadow, and as I said, this is a bigger topic than one video. So last week we looked at Stranger Things, and we looked at the horror genre and what a shadow looks like there. And when I'm referring to shadow, I'm talking about the character that is the antagonist, the villain, the monster in the case of a horror story. But what does it mean in an action story? And for that, I've gone back to everybody's favorite, The Princess Bride, because it's awesome and it is really good storytelling. And one day, if you'd like, let me know in the comments. I will break down this story and all the different genres in it. But I've chosen the action genre because really the global story is at its core an action story. While there is a love story here and there is some friendship stuff and there's some other, worldview stuff and internal stuff, and it's really, really packed full of amazing storytelling. So I'm running out of breath, but it's really, really great. And at the end of the day, you got to pick one. And remember what I said in that last video, that it doesn't really matter if you see something exactly the same way I do. The important thing is that when you're writing a story, you see at least one answer to these obligatory scenes, either in the hero's journey or in the genre that you've picked. But again, the villain isn't a mandatory character in any of the hero's journey scenes. Like the mentor is an obligatory character in the Meet the Mentor scene. That's just, obvious. The herald is a mandatory character in the call to action scene. Again, obvious. And the threshold guardian is a mandatory character in the crossing the threshold scene. Once again, obvious. And ideally, again, you have the mentor in the reward scene. Not necessary, but the story is a lot more rewarding when it is, because it feels like the character has graduated and the hero has moved beyond the needing of a mentor. I'm not talking about the mentor, I'm talking about the shadow. And who is the shadow in Princess Bride? Humperdinck? Humperdinck, 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 Humperdinck. Yes, Humperdinck is the villain. And the obligatory scenes in the action adventure that we need for the shadow, for Humperdinck in this case, is again the hero at the mercy of the villain scene. And when we get this in the Pit of Despair, when Humperdinck comes to Wesley and says, "You will suffer no more than a man in a century will suffer," and that is your hero at the mercy of the villain scene. And the only other obligatory scene that the villain must be in is the discovery of the antagonist's true object of desire. And we discover that. Wesley doesn't really, but we discover that. Wesley supposes it, but we discover it when Humperdinck says to the six-figured man that he intends to kill Buttercup and blame his enemy, and that he initiated the whole kidnapping with Vizzini and everything, and that was his whole plan, so that the two countries would go to war. And this would accentuate and increase his living legend. And he just likes fighting. He's a great hunter, and he loves the hunt, and war is the ultimate hunt. So he's not really interested in love. And this, again, as I said, and I'll put this breakdown in downloadables this week, but this is, again, the difference between the shadow and the light. Again, they're both living legends. Humperdinck is a great prince, and he is the greatest hunter in all the lands. There's your speech. Buttercup gives it, the speech in praise of the villain. He is the greatest in all the land, she says. But at the end of the day, he is a bit of a coward. And it's all a mask. Whereas Wesley is just a poor guy who went off to seek his fortune. And he became the Dread Pirate Roberts. And as the Dread Pirate Roberts, he went off into the world and created a legend. He's feeding off another guy's legend, but he's still a living legend. He lives up to that legend. And where they differ is, again, their belief system. Wesley uses his legend to make his fortune, to be able to be worthy of his love, Buttercup. And that is his end game. He has no intention of continuing the pirate life. He will go and he will live a quiet life as a farmer somewhere with Buttercup, and they will live happily ever after, and that's his plan. Whereas Humperdinck's plan is to kill her and use the love the people have to go to war and increase his legend, to increase his ability as the people's hero. That's what he wants. He wants to be the people's hero and loved for his great works. But the thing is, he's a big old coward and he needs to fake it. Whereas Wesley's the real deal. Villain, the Shadow, Humperdinck, is one of three mandatory characters in an action adventure. You need the hero, Wesley. You need the victim, Buttercup. I'm sorry, this scene is great. I know it has nothing to do with the overarching main plot, but this subplot is just like, come on. Like, this is the reason we watch the movie, isn't it? Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. So you need 3 characters in an action adventure. You need the villain, Humperdinck. You need the hero, Wesley. And you need the victim, Buttercup. And those are 3 roles must be in it. And the hero's object of desire is to stop the villain and save the victim. Obviously. And there's a power divide between the hero and the villain. Well, we see it here where Wesley doesn't even have the strength to rise. And he uses his ingenuity and his brains that we saw him defeating Vizzini to defeat Humperdinck. Not his strength, not his sword, but he uses his legend, his living legend, that he has beaten the giant, and he's beaten the greatest swordsman, and he's beaten the greatest mind, and he's proved that, and he's using that here to defeat the villain, who is at his core a coward. And oftentimes in an action story, there are a lot of subgenres, as I mentioned. In this one, there's a love story. There is a subgenre of another adventure story, which is Inigo's story. We have lots of things, and we need to have conventions for those. And if you want to know about that, let me know in the comments, and I'll do a video, and we'll talk about subgenres and how to implement them into your story. Because a good action adventure story, a good story, has subplots that serve the overarching narrative and that mirror the hero's journey. And that is a really good topic. But let's not get off topic, because we are talking about Humperdinck. Now, there are so many subgenres of the action adventure story. That could be a video on its own as well. There is the person versus nature, the person versus person, which this is. The person versus state, and the person against time. The clock, the ticking clock. Oh, the ticking clock. Another great video all on its own. Let me know, guys, because I can only make so many videos. Let me know in the comments below which of these tools, tropes, things you would like me to break down to help you out. And as always, keep writing. What if I told you that you had the writing tools you needed to tell a great story? Here we're breaking down the villains and the shadow and what we need in different genres to tell a great story. Break through that writer's block and tell the best story you can tell. Click the link in the comments to get the downloadable, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe to see more videos like this one.